2v2 arena composition tier list for World of Warcraft Cataclysm, the best arena comps that are worth playing in this expansion, according to me, a player that's been playing the expansion for 10 years now. And no flex, but I reached like 2,800 rating and similar ratings with many comps, including Unholy DK, Retribution Paladin, Arms Warrior. S tier is going to be the best comps. The ladders will be full of these. It's going to be probably 80 to 90% just consisting of these comps right here. Number 1, Subtlety Rogue, Marksmanship Hunter. Crazy on-demand burst, but any mistakes made playing this comp will cost you maybe the arena game even. So it's not recommended for beginner players, but for the most skilled and the best ones, strong S tier. Very similar composition is also Feral Druid and Marksmanship Hunter. You get some extra help from the Feral Druid, so if the Hunter is in trouble, Feral Druid can help with healing a little bit. But it doesn't have the on-demand frequent burst with Shadow Dance and doesn't have as effective stun lock as Rogue. Another really good one is Subtlety Rogue and Disc Priest. Disc Priest will need a lot of help from the Subtlety Rogue. Disc Priest always do need a lot of peeling from their arena partners, but can also go very offensive when there's space made for the Discipline Priest to dispel the enemies and potentially even deal damage. Feral Druid Disc Priest is very similar also. Feral Druids compared to Subtlety Rogues can also apply bleeds on multiple targets, so you can be killing both of your enemies at the same time. There's also the option of playing with a Restoration Shaman as a Feral Druid. I would say it's a lot more bulky comp. Resto Shaman can survive a lot more by himself, but it's also less offensive, so the games will probably take longer compared to Discipline Priest, who can not only damage and dispel, but can also mana burn the enemy healer. Then we have Retribution Paladin and Unholy Death Knight. My personal favorite comp, super fast games. You have enough healing with Retribution Paladin's Word of Glory. Unholy DK also has its Lichborn and many defensives, including Icebound, AMS, AMZ, and Crazy Burst every 2 minutes with Zealotry and Wings, and every 3 minutes for the Death Knight with Gargoyle. There's a good chance if you don't beat your enemies within the first burst, you just wait those 2 or 3 minutes and the arena is most likely gonna be over by your second burst. Enough crowd control, but not too much, and very easy comp to play. Definitely recommended for beginner players. But you could also play Retribution Paladin with Marksmanship Hunter if you're into more complicated crowd control chains. Definitely tracking diminishing returns is advised to play it properly. Unholy Death Knight with either a Holy Paladin or Resto Shaman is definitely also S tier comp. Unholy Death Knights can kill healers by themselves, and then having a super bulky healer like Holy Paladin or Resto Shaman to counter all the crazy burst comps with rogues, Marksmanship Hunters, and Feral Druids. So if you choose to play any of these S tier comps, you will not go wrong, but keep in mind some of them require a decent amount of skill. Moving on to A tier comps, definitely 100% viable. With some of these you can even make a case for them being S tier or maybe even B tier. Changing tiers with most comps is possible. S tier comps being A or A being S. There aren't really that big differences. Retribution Subtlety Rogue is one of the best comps in the game. It has crazy amount of crowd control, very comparable to playing with Marksmanship Hunter, but you will have different counters. You will struggle more against Feral Druids and Hunters who will counter the Subtlety Rogue. Feral Druid with a healer like Holy Paladin or Resto Shaman, pretty much unkillable. If you're in trouble, you can just dance in bear form forever. Holy Paladin's bubbles will keep you alive. All the Resto Shaman instant healing, totems, Spirit Link. There's pretty much no way you can die with this comp, but it's also really hard to kill the enemy because this comp doesn't really have any damage besides Feral Druid's damage. So prepare for longer games and get some PvE items ideally for the Feral Druid to boost his damage by a little bit. Frost Mage and Subtlety Rogue, any expansion you play, it's at least A tier comp. No different in Cataclysm, still really good. I would say you're gonna struggle against the comps with Ferals and Marksmanship Hunters, which are really frequent. But your burst is crazy, again, on demand. You can survive a lot, but there's probably going to be a limited time that you're going to be able to survive before one of you dies. Unholy Death Knight can be played with any healer. I said Holy Paladin and Resto Shaman are ideal in most of the situations, but you could also play with a Disciplined Priest and Resto Druid. It's a little bit different playstyle, and you will again have to peel for the Disc Priest so he doesn't die. Resto Druid can help you a lot more with crowd control than any other healer can. Fire Mage is another class that can be played with healers. The healers you would ideally pick in your 2v2 composition are Resto Shaman, Holy Paladin, or Discipline Priest. All work really well, and their pros and cons are the same as when playing with any other DPS class. Those are probably going to be longer games and very RNG, especially because of the Fire Mage's Pyroblast. You will be probably running like half of your equipment PvE so that the games don't last until draw every single time. And then we have Enhancement Shaman for the first time in my tier list. Can be played with Retribution Paladin, Disc Priest, Holy Paladin. I've seen all these combinations do really well. Me personally, I would definitely prefer to play with Retribution Paladin. I think the length of the 2v2 games with Enhancement Shaman and a healer is just about 20 plus minutes on average, so I don't really see a point in playing with a healer if you can play with a Retribution Paladin. And the best healers for enhancement are definitely Disc Priest and Holy Paladin. Moving on to B tier, which is still classes and specs that can potentially get all the way up to rank 1. It's just not as common for them to be up there in these kinds of compositions. Number 1 finally making its appearance in the tier list is Arms Warrior. You could make an argument for Arms Warrior and Holy Paladin going into A tier, but I think they have so many counters and they can be just outplayed so bad with any rogue, hunter, and feral on the enemy team that I can't really put them any higher. But again, I've seen Holy Paladin and Arms Warriors at rank 1 in Cataclysm even. You could also play with a Retribution Paladin, which I did, and we got close to like 2,500 rating on Rootless Season with this comp, so it's definitely playable. It's very bursty, it has enough crowd control, and I was playing Arms Warrior with Gag Order build, so I could silence enemies very often with my Pummel and Heroic Throw. But playing it safe with Holy Paladin or Resto Shaman always works fine. Again, get ready for longer games because any mages, hunters, ferals, and rogues will just keep you away from killing anybody because you're so easy to crowd control. Then we have Frost Mage and Disc Priest. Very decent comp. It is very squishy though. Both mages and Disc Priests are super squishy, so you'll have to communicate properly with your teammate to set up crowd control chains. Retribution Paladin can also be played with ferals, mages of any spec pretty much, Fire or Frost, Discipline Priest, Beast Mastery Hunter this time isn't as amazing as Marksmanship, but still very, very decent composition. And Frost Death Knight is also viable. Frost Death Knight is definitely more squishy, but has more frequent burst. With Disc Priest, get ready for super long games. With Fire Mage, it's a little bit about RNG again. With Frost Mage, it's about those bursts into Deep Freeze. And with Feral Druid, you have some extra mobility cooldowns, some extra healing, and very good crowd control with Cyclones and Pounces and Bashes and Roots. And also Affliction Warlocks gets into the B tier for 2v2 with healers. Holy Paladin, Resto Sham, bulky healers, those that can heal a ton. Because Affliction Warlock is so squishy, you have a lot of crowd control, obviously, which will keep you alive for more than you should be alive. But you definitely need that super strong healing from the two strongest healers in the game. And it's again a comp that will most likely be having games of 20 minutes and more. And finally, the last one, Frost Death Knight and Holy Paladin. Believe it or not, I saw it at rank 1-2 recently. Very frequent burst, Frost DKs. One of the most squishy classes out there, so you need that super strong healing from Holy Paladin with all the Hands of Sacrifice, protection, and bubbles. And finally, the C tier comps. These are still totally playable. You will oftentimes see them above 2,000 rating. I have seen some of them as high as like 2,400, 2,500, which is still super impressive. They're just not very common to be up there, and it's more of an exception to see them really high in 2v2. The first one, Arms Warrior, with healers like Disc Priest, the squishy healer, or Resto Druid, the crowd controlling healer. You could also play Arms Warrior and Marksmanship Hunters. Those games will be super fast because none of you two is able to survive super long. You don't really have much of healing as Arms or Marksmanship Hunter, but you have really good burst and you have really good crowd control. I don't see a Marksmanship Hunter that would want to play with an Arms Warrior compared to Feral Druid or Subtlety Rogue, but if you have a good friend and you can set up your crowd control properly, you could totally play this comp. Unholy Death Knight can also be played with Marksmanship Hunter, very comparable to how Arms Warrior and Marksmanship plays, and it can also be played with Subtlety Rogue. I mean, Subtlety Rogue is one of those spec class combinations where you can pretty much play with anything and never go too wrong. Again, you will only survive for a limited amount of time, so you'll probably only pop your gargoyle once and then the game is over. You either win or lose. Retribution Paladin plus Resto Shaman, similar to playing with Disc Priest as a Retribution Paladin, but these games will probably be even longer. So if you love to spend your youth in Arena, go for it. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's playable. Subtlety Rogue and Shadow Priest. Definitely not nearly as strong as it used to be on Wrath of Lich King. Shadow Priest got insanely nerfed, but it's still totally playable with good crowd control, with rogue peeling for the Shadow Priest. You can do really well in Arena. Affliction Warlock can also be played with a Resto Druid for more of a crowd controlling playstyle. Elemental Shaman for the first time, also playable in 2v2, not very recommended. And the classes and specs you would want to play with are Discipline Priest, Retribution Paladin, Subtlety Rogue. I think these are the three best that I have seen with Elemental Shaman. But again, all these three specs have better classes and specs to play with in 2v2. So it's going to be hard to find an arena partner as an Elemental Shaman. Balanced Druid also made its way to C tier and could be played with things like Holy Paladin, Subtlety Rogue, maybe even Retribution Paladin. Again, Retribution Paladin being one of those that can play with pretty much anything with those Word of Glories. Balanced Druid isn't that amazing in 2v2, it's not really any special. Balance can do really good AoE damage, can do some off healing, a lot of crowd control, so you can have some fun in 2v2 as Balance, definitely. And finally, the last composition in all of my tier list is Shadow Priest with Resto Shaman or Resto Druid. Super long games, very comparable to playing Affliction Warlock with these healers. So if you want to play it safe, because Shadow Priest is also a hybrid that can also heal, and you're fine with longer games, then I guess you could go with this one. Not my cup of tea, to be honest. And that's it. These are all the comps that I could think of. Maybe I forgot about one. If you have different experience playing Cataclysm PvP, let us know. Let us know if there's a composition that deserves to be in the list. There's definitely comps that used to be good back in the day, those 15 years ago, playing things like Double Death Knight. I don't think it would be that good anymore. I think most people are now aware that they cannot go in melee range fighting a Blood Death Knight, letting them death strike. I don't see some of the compositions that used to be good back in the day doing any well now. But hey, maybe I will get surprised. I've even seen Affliction Warlock and Disc Priest doing really well and getting up to like 2400 ratings, so it happens. It's all about who you're playing with and what kind of synergy you have with your arena partner, more so than the composition you're playing, obviously. But if you have both an amazing arena partner and an amazing arena composition, you're gonna do that much better. Thanks for watching. Like the video if you liked it. Tell me if you want to see more similar videos about Cataclysm PvP. And I'll see you in the... I'll see you in the arena.